Welcome into the award-winning Action Network podcast. I'm your host today, Brendan Glasheen. The NCAA Tournament makes its turn for home. The Final Four begins this Saturday, April 2nd in New Orleans. Today, we are surfing the player prop market for the two-game slate featuring Kansas and Villanova. Kansas, a 4.5-point favorite as it stands right now. And in case you've been living under a rock, a historical North Carolina-Duke matchup in the primetime game. Over the last 99 meetings, UNC has won 49 games, Duke has won 50, and this is the third time, of course, they will face each other this season, both coming from the ACC. Joining me today, Sean Koerner. He's been with us all March Madness, Director of Predictive Analytics at the Action Network. Doug Ziefel is also back with us, Action Network contributor. Glad to have Tanner McGrath joining us this week. He also contributes at the Action Network. So, Sean, we'll start with you just before we get into picks and go through each of your player props for the weekend. Again, just two games, four teams to choose from. When you have such a small sample size now, I would assume it gets easier to dissect the field because it's a lot smaller. But what are some things you're keeping an eye out for when you also acknowledge the spreads, the totals, and these are just massive games for 19 to 22, 23-year-olds and just the stage in New Orleans?
Yeah, so it's a smaller slate, which means it's easier to dive into each matchup, probably too much. But sportsbooks have adjusted really well, so we have less value to kind of hunt for. So it makes it even tougher, but more fun and challenging. And, last week I heard some theories that the rims were angled up and the balls might have been overinflated, but we saw a lot of unders hit. So I'm going to keep that in mind when it comes to point props and things like that. Might be a little tricky, but other than that, I'm playing it straight up. But like I said, the markets have gotten a lot sharper. We've seen all of these guys play a few games now. So it's a lot tougher this week, in my opinion.
Doug, how about yourself? Just something that you're looking out for based on what you've learned this tournament and how you look at the Final Four.
Yeah, a lot of what Sean said. The lines are getting a lot more efficient here as we get deeper into the tournament. Competition's getting tougher. If you look at our projections, a lot of unders have been coming in, like Sean said, and they've been money so far. So if you're stuck in between a rock and a hard place with a certain player prop, definitely look to our projections here, that they've been really good throughout the tournament.
And Tanner, this is your first time joining us, so welcome. And also just some thoughts on how similar to what these guys both said. We've got two games, four teams. What angles are you looking at here for the weekend?
Yes, and thanks for having me on. Both spreads look pretty efficient. I don't think I see a side on either, but I'm definitely going to look at both unders, specifically first half unders, which have been 11-1 since the start of the Sweet 16.
Very good. All right, let's not waste time. Let's dive into some picks for the weekend. Sean Koerner, we'll start with you. We'll start with Nova and Kansas. You got a rebounding prop for us.
Yeah, so the prop I like in this matchup is Jermaine Samuels under 7.5 rebounds. You can get it for even money right now over at FanDuel. This one's kind of scary because he has gone over this in 7 of the past 8 games. But I'm trusting the numbers here, trusting the matchup. He stayed under this number 65% of the time this season. But with Justin Moore out, Jay Wright has said that he wants to get Eric Dixon more playing time. So, Dixon just getting 3 to 5 more minutes is really going to eat into Samuel's rebounding prop here. So that's partly why we like it. But there also won't be as many rebound chances overall for Villanova. Kansas ranks in the top 40 in offensive rebound rate. They're also a very good shooting team. They rank 29th in effective field goal percentage, leaning a lot on, 2-point shots. So they're going to take a lot of high percentage shots, fewer rebound chances overall. So that's why we're projecting Samuels closer to 6.5 boards with a 61% chance of staying under 7.5.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that quite a bit. I get the sense Justin Moore being out, so it's likely a 6-man rotation for Villanova against the Jayhawks on Saturday. How about another prop for us in the other game, Duke UNC?
Yeah, so I'm going to have fun with this one. I'm going with most points scored in the game, Armando Bacot at plus 550. Obviously Banchero should be the favorite here, and he is. He's plus 320. And Brady Manek is next up at plus 490. But we have all three of these guys projected pretty similarly when it comes to points. So Bacot's a value at plus 550. We have him closer to plus 400. But Duke's defensive philosophy is to limit threes and free throws and let teams score inside. They've allowed 58% of their points this season to 2 3-point shots, which is the 10th highest rate in the country. So Bacot being their main point scorer inside, he should feast here. He did in their last matchup. He went 10 of 11 from the field, scored 23 points, tied Banchero for most points scored in the game. So I think it should be a 3-man race for the top point scorer. So I think we're going to getting a good deal here at plus 550.
He's coming off a 22-20 game against St. Peter's. Granted, the competition a lot different in this matchup, but yeah, that was the blowout win. The stat line you're referencing was the blowout win in Coach K's final regular season game at Cameron. So he was up for the task then on a big stage. Doug Ziefel, we'll go with you here and discuss Nova, Kansas. And you want to discuss this Kansas player has been red hot. He's probably been their X factor here this tournament.
Yeah, I'm going to target Remy Martin's point prop here, going over 11.5. You can get this best price at minus 113 at FanDuel. When looking at Martin's work here, it's important to consider the sample size. He returned in the Big 12 tournament, and since then he's averaged 13.3 points per game, and he's averaged over 11 field goal attempts per game throughout the NCAA tournament. So his volume and his scoring have both been up, and he seems to be rising as the bigger the stage gets. And if you look at Martin's attempts, he does a lot of his work at the rim and from inside the arc. And Villanova is susceptible at the rim. They've allowed their opponents to make 57% of their shots, and they're only slightly above average from inside the arc. So as long as Martin gets his normal amount of volume, he should be able to go well over this number.
I find your pick daring just because Nova likes to slow the game down, as it's well documented, and just I feel overs in this game. Now, of course, that has to go Nova's way, right? Like if the game favors a Kansas pace and they run up the score, which they possibly could, then overs could very well end up being in your favor. But I like it. Remy Martin, he's been the man. He's been the go-to guy off the bench as their sixth man. You've got another pick for us, and we're over on UNC and Duke now, Doug.
Yeah, so if you read our prop articles throughout the tournament, me and Tanner, and we had Mike Calabrese on throughout the last week, we've been doing those articles throughout the tournament. You know, I've been targeting UNC's perimeter defense throughout every matchup that I can, and I found another guy that I'm going to use to pick on them. I'm going to take AJ Griffin over 1.5 threes. You can get this at minus 160 on FanDuel. If you look at Griffin, he's their best. He's the Blue Devils' best 3-point shooter. He's made him at over 46% this year, and UNC is 205th in 3-point percentage allowed. But what's important with these kind of props is you need volume, and the volume's been there for Griffin. He's averaged 5.6 3-point attempts over his last 5 games, and he's went over this number in 18 of 38 games and 4 of his last 6. So considering the pace, the volume, and the quality of shooter, Griffin is pretty much a sure bet to get over this number here.
Duke UNC has a total right now at 151. And then we head over to Tanner McGrath. We'll start Nova, Kansas for you, sir. And there's another over here on the Nova side.
Yeah, this is playing right off of Sean's pick. You know, this whole game is about Justin Moore being out, and you're wondering who's going to step up for the Wildcats. Well, I'm going to look at Eric Dixon, over 8.5 points. It's plus money at DraftKings at plus 110. Amazingly, Moore has only missed 1 game in his 3-year tenure with the Cats. That 1 game was against Connecticut earlier this season, and Dixon stepped in, filled all the holes, and carried Villanova to a 9-point win. He scored 24 points on 10 of 14 from 2-point range. And he's just going to get all this extra volume. They're going to run a 6-man rotation. He's going to get the extra 3 to 5 minutes. But another thing is the style. Villanova primarily creates offense via the pick and roll sets, and then they try to find spot up 3-pointers or off the dribble 3-pointers. But they also post up about 11% of the time. That's top 50 nationally. On the season, Dixon has gotten 40% of those opportunities, but second most is Moore, who got 24% of those opportunities. Kansas has a solid post-up defense with McCormick and others, but it regressed during Big 12 play. And so Dixon's going to get the extra volume in this game with Moore out, and I'll happily take 8.5 or 9, just as long as we're getting plus money.
Very good. And how about your pick in Carolina Duke, Tanner?
Yeah, so this play is getting a lot of love on Twitter, which is always a bad sign, but I like it anyways. Brady Manek over 2.5 3-pointers made. It's also plus money on FanDuel, plus 115. Since the calendar flipped to February, Manek is shooting over 40% from deep. He's been good in every area, basically, but he's become a lethal stretch 4. And during just this NCAA tournament run, so 4-game sample size, he's launched 34 3-point attempts and made 16 of them. That's good for a 47% clip and he's gone over 2.5 3-point made in all 4 games. And stretching that out further, over a 10-game sample size dating back to the February 21st matchup with Louisville, Manek is averaging 7.6 3-point attempts per game, shooting 42% on those attempts and going over this line in 8 of those 10 games. Plus, in the 2 games against Duke this year, he attempted 23s, made 11 of them. And that's primarily because if Duke is weak anywhere, it's in 3-point defense. The Devils are sub 200 in defensive efficiency against both catch and shoot threes and off the dribble threes per shot quality. So like his hair and beard combo suggests, he's been a flamethrower from deep, and I'll take him to go over 2.5 3-pointers one more time at plus money.
All right, Chance, great stuff. Well, I know it's a small slate, so we went around really quickly there for these 2 games. Looking forward to a great weekend in New Orleans, Villanova, Kansas, Duke, UNC. We will look forward to seeing all of you again, listening. Hopefully you all can listen again on Monday when we have the national championship. Of course, we'll have 2 winners emerge from the weekend, and we'll dive into the player prop market for the national title game in New Orleans. For Sean Koerner, Doug Ziefel, and Tanner McGrath, Brendan Glasheen. Thanks for tuning into the Action Network podcast, and thanks for joining us all March Madness long for this player props edition of the pod. We'll catch you next time.